Hey, hey, and welcome. You're tuning in to Unbreakable Hope with me, your host, Jessica Rose. This podcast is all about seeking the light. In each episode, we chat with someone who has either overcome the darkness or who is actively spreading light within their own community. So let's jump into today's episode. Thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited for our conversation today.
Thank you so much for bringing me on finally.
Yes, I'm glad you told me. You're like, I'm waiting for you to ask me. I'm like, I'm waiting for you to sign up. So this is really awesome. Your story is amazing. So spoiler, Chris has a book and it's on audio. So I listened to it on audio. So I have an extra deep cheat into our guest today. And I'm just really excited to actually get to talk about this, hear you talk about it, ask questions, and expose your amazing story to our listeners. So I'm going to pass it over to you so you can introduce yourself a little bit and then we'll just jump in.
So I'm Chris Turnbull. I joined the fire department back in June of 2001, became an emergency medical technician in 2004, enlisted in the Army, did a contract with the Army until about 2011, and decided I was going to go back to school and further my education. And from that time on, have kind of been on a whole whirlwind of highs and lows throughout the career. And it's kind of led up to one really bad night writing a journal entry without having my journal present. So I ended up having a 62-page document in front of me within about 8 hours that needed to be elaborated on. So that is why I'm here now, because apparently the book that came out of that is apparently good. I mean, if Mrs. Oklahoma Petite says it's good, it's good.
I definitely think it is. You hit on so many necessary topics. I was sharing before we recorded that some of them hit personally. We have some experiences where I was like, wow, I have an experience that was kind of similar to that. And I just love how honest and raw you were with it because I think that's a big thing, especially when it comes to our first responders and our mental health and just like life struggles in general, is somehow we keep them so taboo and so dark in first responder roles. And I like to say it's because first responders, we kind of put on this pedestal. Those are the people we call for help, so they can't possibly need help. So I love that you're willing to talk about it. And I love all the different themes in your book too. So I know we're going to dive in a little bit more about your life and how things, I mean, 2020, right? Changed our whole lives for everybody. So I'd love to kind of,
Forever.
yes. I'd love to dive in some more on that and yeah, just dig in some more on your story and where you've been and where you're going.
Great, great. So I had said about going back to school after I got out of the Army. And so in 2012, I went back to get my associate's degree and become a paramedic. So by 2013, I had that certification. And, you know, the difference between an EMT is they're like your first responder. They've got the basics. They can, you know, take your vital signs, figure out, are you sick? Are you not sick? They get a huge jump on trauma before the paramedics arrive and take over. And, you know, paramedics will then take over control of the heart, administer blood, start IVs, a lot more invasive procedures, breathing tubes if they need it. So here I am with this higher level skill set now. Before I was able to say, oh man, this patient's crazy. Like, give me a paramedic now. And it's like, all right, it's your problem. But now I have this higher level of responsibility. So I'm the one that, you know, people, the EMTs are be coming to and saying, hey, like, this is serious. So I learned how to manage higher acuity patients. Through this, I just had so many challenging, rewarding, hurtful, and devastating calls over the years, and found out throughout the years that a lot of the people that I've worked with, many of them have taken their own life. In 2017, I relocated. And in 2018, I began working at a government-based paramedic service, which was a huge like eye-opener to just a different culture between like working for the mom and pop, working for the fire department, now working for a government-based agency. It was just wild. So we cue in 2020 and COVID just made everyone miserable. Behind me, I've got my Super Bowl champion um, banner back there, and I tell everyone that J Lo and Shakira did the halftime show of the Super Bowl, not knowing that the next day the world was going to end. And that's kind of how it feels in hindsight. Like it was the best halftime show ever, and then everything shut down. Nobody's allowed to go anywhere. You can't have parties. You can't have social encounters. Churches weren't allowed to meet. And in 2020, that was all fine with me. Like I didn't need to go to church. I was doing all this by myself. I was in control. I was managing these patients. I was managing my family. I was managing our life, and was just too proud to admit that my method of management was failing everybody that I was around. Um, I wasn't present at home. Social media was out of control. So between TikTok, all the conspiracy theories on Facebook, Instagram, like I said, TikTok. Uh, TikTok ended up taking its popularity that year. So everyone was commenting on Carol Baskin. So, you had to get on the Netflix. You had to watch The Tiger King. And then till you have all this outside stimuli, not being allowed to interact with people, and at the same time trying to keep people alive who are having a terrible time breathing. And some of which it got to a point where I would look at a patient and say, yeah, this is it. Like we're never going to see this patient again. Or, the ones from the nursing home that would get sent out a little early, we're going to see them a few more times and then no more. We kind of had the ability to assess who's going to live, who's going to die, and having that kind of knowledge or experience rather, that was a really hard position to be in. Um, it's like playing God, and I didn't like it. So my family life was suffering. My wife was home with the kids all the time and looked forward to me coming home to be an additional interactive adult, to play with the kids, to help with meals, to help with whatever is going on at the house. And I would plant myself on the chair and either turn on the TV or sit and scroll on my phone for hours, and just, I was there physically, but I couldn't be there mentally or emotionally. I was everywhere else, and it was bad. Um, by the fall, I was just not okay, and I wasn't ready to admit it. And our kids' babysitter historically had cried to my wife that I'm mean. And it was over simple things early on, like the knob on the coffee pot was adjusted to 2 cups of coffee and not the entire pot. So when I wanted to fill up my huge, like 5-gallon coffee thermos, I had nothing waiting for me when I got there. And I couldn't even be nice about it then. And that was before everything with COVID hit and kept my wife home. It was just, I was too irritable. I was not a nice person. And people were telling me, hey, you should probably talk to somebody or get medicated. And I was like, no, I got it. Like it's fine. You're misperceiving the situation. You're being overly sensitive. I had every excuse why. And we finally made a trip home, um, to go visit some people, and nobody that we wanted to visit wanted us to visit because of the whole social distancing. You're coming from down by the beaches where everybody's sick and everybody's making their way to, now that they're working remotely. You're going to get us all sick. Like, don't visit. So it was just gut wrenching. Like, I'd been away for so long, and then nobody wanted to see me when I got back, because they didn't want me to get them sick being in a touristy area. Um, I just, I hit a very hard low after that visit, just sitting on the floor of my bedroom. Like, is this where I'm supposed to be? Is this the context my life is supposed to take right now? Like, um, everything sucked. Everything absolutely sucked. And I was just going round and round. Like, where do I go from here? Everybody around me is dying. Every time I go to work, I have 14 days left to live, because that's what the media had painted the picture, that It incubates for 14 days before you even know you have it. And by that time, you're getting everybody else sick. So am I going to die from this? Am I going to cause my wife or kids to die from this? Like, why? Why am I in this position? And I finally reached out to our babysitter's mom, who was one of the first people to actually give me a phone number for a counselor. And I was like, I think it's time for me to get that phone number. Um, I was not happy to learn during our first meeting that the babysitter's mom gave me a phone number for a spiritual Christian counselor, because I was like, I don't need God. Like, I'm a paramedic and I'm managing all this on my own, and I know who's going to live and who's going to die from COVID. Like, why do I need God in my life? Like, I don't want a Christian counselor. And she asked me, like, are you a Christian? And I was like, well, yeah. And she's like, are you sure? I was like, well, I mean, I'm not Jewish. I'm not Muslim. I'm not Hindu. So yeah, sure. I'm a Christian. I was born and raised in a Catholic church. I think that's a Christian. Um, so she was like, I just wanted to ask so that I can interject biblical perspectives and some of the material that I send out to you. I want to make sure that it's going to be cohesive. So I'm thinking to myself, great, you're not going to be able to help me. I'm in a niche occupation as a medic. You have no idea what to do with me. So you're just going to bring God into it and make it all better. Perfect. Um, and that's kind of where this whole transition ended up happening. And it was bizarre because while I was having Zoom sessions with a counselor, my phone's blowing up, my email inbox is blowing up, and she's stuff that I've said, she's got a resource for. And whenever I'd hit the trigger, she'd send the resource. And I was listening to books on audio, podcasts, recorded sermons, nothing that I wanted to listen to. But I have an hour and a half commute to work and nothing better to do. So I started listening and really started to find some wisdom that actually made sense. Like, we're not alone, and to try to do everything on our own is not healthy at all. Um, I started to identify, like, okay, well, for the next bad call, for the next bad season, what do I have for support? My wife is great. My wife used to be an EMT. She had the worst call of her career and said that was it. Um, she understands the job. She knows where I'm at when I call her crying on the phone from a ditch on the side of the road. She gets it. I don't like to be vulnerable in front of her because I'm supposed to be the husband. I'm supposed to be the rock. I'm supposed to be, everything that the family is built on and lead the family. And so to show vulnerability and just weakness was a huge hit to my pride. So, like, yes, I had her, but I didn't want to use her. Now I had this counselor who actually was starting to make sense to me. Uh, the material that she was sending made sense. A lot of stuff was starting to fit into place. And one of the books that she had sent me was by a pastor named Craig Groeschel, and it was called Fight. And it was just talking about the community and of men and how we need to find our wolf pack, because a lone wolf will survive, but they thrive in a pack. And it was the first time that I'd heard Christians referred to as wolves, in that if you come into a church, you've got a whole network that's going to pull you in and grow with you. If you try to go at life alone, you can do it, but are you going to get the best out of it? Prior to that, everything that I heard was, yeah, Christians are a bunch of sheep, which is not untrue. I mean, we've got a really good shepherd. You should try him out sometime. Um, Coming into that, like now I'm in this position where I've got to make a decision. Am I going to like follow through with everything that's being taught and find a church, or am I going to continue to live in the past with how church was growing up and, you know, reliving the nightmares from church? You know, we went as a kid, you know, we went as a family when the family was together, and it was boring. It was the same thing every Sunday. You had to stand up, you had to sit down, you had to say the same things at the right time, doing the right things, and you didn't talk to anybody until you were told to talk to somebody. So as I got older, I feel like I was more concerned getting all the words right, more so than actually focusing on the prayers that were being prayed, if that makes sense. Like, okay, now we're going to recite this belief, our belief structure, and everyone's going down through it in unison. But are you actually thinking about the words you're saying, or are you thinking about the next word that you need to say? And that made it tough and never felt like a community. I was just one more person in the congregation. Um, you know, if I miss a week or a few weeks, nobody's going to care. No one's going to notice. There's so many people packed in there, so many people standing in the back. You know, as long as they're getting their donations every Sunday, they're happy. Um, as my home life kind of got miserable with my parents, and they started to get into their season where they needed a divorce and separate and stuff, I became an altar boy, mostly to get their approval, but also I just had a miserable relationship with my mom and did not want to sit with her alone in church. Um, so my avenue to get away from her and still go to church as required was to become this altar boy. And even in the same token, like I needed to be in the right place at the right time, saying the right thing, doing the right thing, like this whole rehearsed ritual. So I was putting in all the steps. I rang the bells at the right time. The one time that I didn't ring the bells, I had three other altar servers looking at me like I had just committed a huge sin and I'm going to burn right in front of them. And it was just, for what? You left church, you got to the parking lot, everyone's honking their horns because somebody's in the way, somebody can't back out of a space, there's fingers flying, and I'm like, what did we just do for the last hour? Why? Like, why is it like this? Um,
Mhm.
I had my next out. My parents divorced. I moved with my dad and didn't need to attend church. My dad works for a funeral home. He would tell me that he's okay missing church on Sunday because he's in church Monday through Friday with dead people. Um, so I was good with that. Like, let's replace that with absolutely anything else. And nobody from the congregation ever reached out and was like, hey, I haven't seen you in church in a while. Like, are you good? Like, what's going on with you? What's new in your life? Nothing. Like, it was one other piece of an assembly line. So it was just a place that was full of rules. Nobody was following them anyway. God forbid you came in as a single mother. They might turn you away or just look down on you because, oh my goodness, you know, if you got divorced, shame on you. Um, don't come in, you know, if you're on drugs or if you've been drinking. We don't want to see that. If you're not dressed up nicely, don't come in. The one uh, church close to where we lived at one point had a posted dress code on the door of attire that was not welcome. And I was like, this is all the stuff that turns people off to church. You know, it's insane. So I decided through counseling that I would start looking at Facebook Live on Sunday and try to find something that resonated with me. And I found a church that some old neighbors of ours had said they attended. So I watched a Sunday sermon, and the pastor was speaking from like US history. He was speaking from the Bible. Everything that he was saying was like relatable, and you could identify with what he was saying. And he was very knowledgeable in all areas. And I was like, this is really cool. Um, I might have fallen asleep toward the end. Um, the next video that come up was this younger guy, looked like he was on a stage of a comedy club and was preaching like it was a comedy club. I was laughing. I was just blown away at the stuff that he was saying and how it related to the Bible, and could not wrap my head around, like, this is a church. And I was like, where is this place? Like, this is insane. Um, I will move to California to go and sit in this guy's church. And it turned out it was a mile up the road from where we were living. Um, so I took my kids and I walked in and I told them, do not talk to strangers. You're going to sit with me. You're going to sit still. You're going to stay right by my side. And when you guys are bored, let me know, because we're leaving. That way I can say that I tried and it wasn't for us and we're good. So we walk into the doors and the kids director sees two new faces and she squats down with her arms wide open and my kids just take off for me to go give her a hug. So scratch that whole plan.
Fine.
I was like, man, these kids just really do not listen. So I had this like 7'9" Marine walk up to me and welcome me. And with my tail between my legs, I left him escort me to a seat because it's COVID. I have to sit in a certain spot with so many chairs in between somebody else, and I have to make sure my mask is on and all that stuff. But I'm not going to stand up and walk out with this guy at the door. Like, there's sequoia trees or redwood trees in California that look up to him. If he would get hit by a car, he would be fine. The car would be a paperweight. So now I'm sitting in church and it breaks out into this rock concert. And I'm like, this is awesome. After the rock concert's over, the comedian comes up onto the stage and he has just got me laughing. He's gotten me in tears at one point, laughing some more. And then at the end, just everything came together and just hit. And I was like, what did I just do? Like, I have been laughing and interacting and enjoying myself. And yet I have all of this truth that was just punched in my face. How? When I came in, they were finishing a series called You Are Blank, and they were just filling in the blank each week. And at the end of the sermon, he said that next week's series, they're going to kick off with Family Matters. So I'm just floored. Like, I was running my family not very well, and now we're going to get into Family Matters. So I got to bring my wife along the following week, and we essentially just established then that this is our home, that this is where we needed to be this entire time. And it was just crazy how it all came together. And my counselor is like my best cheerleader on this. She's like, yeah, you made it. And you didn't, the place didn't burn down when you walked in. Nobody got struck by lightning. Every excuse that I gave her why I wasn't going to go to church, she just recited back to me that none of it happened. And instead, like, I was just blown away. So it was easy to start to anchor into the truths that I was learning and start replacing all the doctrine, traditions, and all the ritual that was put so many years prior. You know, I learned the faith is about relationship. It's not about the rituals. The church, as it's intended, is a community that supports each other. And I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is that I am good enough.
Yeah.
Because my self-worth was gone. Like, I was a cog in a machine. I was picking people up, taking them to the hospital, maybe making a difference. During 2020, it didn't feel like I was. I had no purpose. I just did what I was supposed to do, made sure that I maintained a pulse on my patients and myself, and walked numbly through life. And now here I'm being told that no, really, you are good enough. You were created with a purpose. And to explore that with others in the community just blew my mind. Our church does small groups, and the group that we had gotten into was just a bunch of guys, a bunch of people on a Thursday night, tapped in by Zoom, and we would revisit whatever the message was on Sunday, dig a little bit deeper into the scripture from it. The pastor released this whole questionnaire to kind of guide the way that material went. And as a smaller group, we were discussing the sermon, we were discussing life. Somebody would come into the group, something happened during the week, and like we were just there to kind of give input, give support, and lift each other up. And I never had that before in my life. I've never saw anything like that. I was better at kicking myself when I was down than I would ever have been trying to lift somebody up on my own. I don't know if you ever, get stressed and feel that way.
Oh yeah, I think that's definitely something that a lot of people can relate to. There's a song, and I knew I was gonna like forget the artist name, but one of the lines is in there like, I'm really good at beating myself up. Like in a fight, I can beat myself up really good, and I think that's something that, especially, I can imagine in your role and my role as a caregiver, it's definitely really easy to internalize, to point at myself, I'm not doing enough. I should be doing this. The shoulda, woulda, coulda is right. Definitely feeling that like just constant sense of beat when you can't control the things. You feel like you can, but then when you can't control something, it makes you spiral out even more. So I can also relate to, you spoke earlier about the just scrolling, like you're just so numb from the day to day and exhausted from the day to day. Just being able to say, I don't even have the energy to do anything. I just want to sit down and scroll all day. Which of course then that also leads to not feeling like enough. feeling like you're beating yourself up because you're like, oh great, now I'm not doing anything. But you said, I got to make sure my own pulse is going. And sometimes the only way to do that is just like sit and be. And then you get in this vicious cycle of, well, then I didn't do anything. Then I didn't support my wife or my kids, or I wasn't productive in this or that. So I personally feel that way a lot. I notice when I take days of rest because my body is making me, those are even the worst ones where I beat myself up the most.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
That's my professional opinion.
I love it. My husband would always say it's like a light switch. Like when I would get so trapped in the negative and the darkness, he'd say, "What is this? Like, just turn it off." And I was like, "It's not a light switch." He's like, "Yeah, it is." So it takes time. It takes training your brain and really focusing on that and finding those supports and saying, "Hey, like there is a time and place for rest." So I got sick a couple weeks ago actually. We had to reschedule this episode because of it. And I remember thinking like, oh, like okay, this is my body. This is God saying take a step back. So I'm like, okay. So I did. I canceled everything for like 3 days because I knew my old self, I would have just been like, jump back in it the next day. And I'm like, no, this is a sign that I need to actually take. Obviously, I'm, throwing up sick. Like, I need to take the next day to fully rest. And then the next day to focus on, okay, what is it that is getting me to this point to make sure that I'm taking care of myself? Because if I don't take care of myself, I definitely can't take care of my husband and then he's screwed.
Fair. But you mentioned a song, and it's funny. Like one of the things I started doing to try to fix my mental place and my perspective was I started listening to the Christian music.
Mhm.
And I was driving to work the one morning, and this artist Matthew West, he did a song called "Truth Be Told," and I wasn't aware of it. I'd just gotten through an intersection on the highway, and the song comes on, and he's talking about the lies that we're told we're supposed to have it all together. Nobody's airing out their laundry except you. Like keep it suppressed, and like the chorus was just talking about saying, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. And then admitting that you're broken. And so much content from that song. I needed to pull my car over. I was a wreck. I was an absolute wreck. It was so much truth in 3 minutes, and it hurt. It hurt so bad because this guy was just singing about me, and I did it for so long. For so long, I kept trying to suppress it. And one of the lines from my book that people like to quote in interviews was, "We make deposits into the suppression bank and let it sit there and collect interest."
Yeah.
I did that my whole life. And for this song to expose me, no, I wasn't having it. I needed a minute. And I was on the side of the road crying into laundry that was in my car. Like, I don't think I've ever had a song hit that hard.
Mm.
Um, and it was so true. And it's everybody, and we all do it. We bury it all down. We put on a happy face. We, tell people we're fine. Because honestly, if I'm passing somebody on the street and I'm say, "Hey, how are you?" Good, good, great. And then you just keep walking. If they would stop and say, "Well, the ex-wife sent me another letter from the attorney. Kids haven't talked to me in about 2 weeks. And now she wants to take my custody away." Like, maybe I wasn't trying to engage you in that conversation so much, but given the time and the place, like, yes, you've got to be able to say, "No, like, this is what's on my heart. This is what's hurting me. This is what happened this week. This is what is drawing me down. This is what is kicking me over. And this is why I feel like I'm drowning and I can barely keep my head above water." Um, and you need the community to do that. You've got to have that support network. So I said before that I had my wife that I could call crying on the phone and be like, "This sucks. This is what I'm going through." And I had her support. But now I've got my wife, I've got a counselor that will open up an hour of her schedule if I text her and I'm like, "Listen, work was awful. Give me a couple minutes here and let me see how I can move stuff around, and I'll get back to you at the time and see if you can take an hour." Um, and one particular time that had happened, we had a supplemental unit up at work, and one of the providers on that truck said, "Listen, I'm going to come down and cover your guys' zone for that hour so you can get that taken care of." Awesome. Awesome. I love when a good plan comes together that wasn't necessarily planned, but it came together, and it was so needed. And to have that kind of support is needed as well from coworkers. Um, so now I've got, the counselor, my wife, some pastors. I've got my small group, um, that when life happens, it happens together, and we get through it together, and we lift each other up together. Um, and it has been just a wild transition. Um, three or 4 weeks into going to church, my wife and I, we gave our lives to Jesus. And July 4th of 2021, Independence Day, I declared my independence, from everything that was holding me down, and got baptized. And it was amazing. That same day, the church was celebrating their 10 years in that location. And uh, a very popular um, artist from the 90s, Nick Lachey, did a plug, singing "Happy Birthday" to the campus in the beginning of the service. Now, I wasn't baptized till the end of the service, but I was so excited. I was like, not only is it Independence Day and I got baptized and I got my independence, but Nick Lachey was there. And it was just it was just a really cool experience. And my babysitter's mom was there for that. And she grabbed a hold of me afterward and she said, "You know how you feel right now?" I was like, "Yes." She's like, "Don't you ever lose that."
Oh,
It's just, and it's been wild. Through counseling, I was journaling, and I had that opportunity one night to sit down there and just journal. And what ended up coming out of my fingertips was so much hurt for so long and so much heaviness that needed to come out. And it did. It came out very quickly. It came out very emotionally. I'm sitting there by myself with the laptop in front of me crying. And the only time I've ever done that before was when I was trying to get my associate's degree. Um, just crying, just trying to get the words out. And I had no problem getting the words out, getting them organized later. That was a task, but so many facets of life came out that needed to be addressed. And it changed everything. From the time that it was published, within the first 6 months, I was getting, I don't want to call it fan mail because I don't deserve fans. Um, but I was getting like emails on LinkedIn and stuff from people who read the book and were like, listen, like, this is what I went through, and this is how my agency treated me for it. Um, and it's insane that I wasn't the only one feeling the way I was feeling, that there were so many more. And looking back, I could never have recognized that any of the people that I worked with were going to go on to kill themselves.
Mm.
And just in the ways that they were done. I had a guy that I just looked up to from my childhood, from my dad being in the fire department with him. And he was a paramedic. I was 3, 4, 5 years old going to these reunion pool parties. And I didn't know what a paramedic was, but everybody loved this dude. So, it was probably something cool to be. Um, he was very set in his ways, did not take students often. And when I was learning the craft, once I had my certification, he pulled me under his wing and was like, come ride with me. And we had a great day. He's teaching me my documentation, give me some shortcuts, took me over to the ER and said, this is where we're going to sit at 3 o'clock because the evening shift of nurses comes in and the day shift of nurses goes out. And this is prime real estate right here on this bench. Awesome. This is good information for later. To find out after we moved that he shot his fifth wife in the driveway and went out back and killed himself. Like, it wasn't him. Like, I didn't know him. The amount of shock because I put this guy on a pedestal and like, I didn't have a cross on my wall, but from a career perspective, I easily could have had his picture framed over the fireplace in an oil painting. Like, this was the medic you wanted to be. Everybody knew him. He kept his fire gear with him in his car all the time. If somebody had a fire in a neighboring district, whether he was a firefighter there or not, he would show up on scene, put his stuff on, be welcomed right in and start going to work. Like, everybody knew him. Everybody loved him. I had a pregnancy call one night when we walked in and the patient's like breathing heavy, ready to give birth and says, is Jimmy coming? And my partner looks and says, did he do this to you? It was just a real funny moment. Like, but I never knew that he was even married. I never knew the quantity of marriages he's had. I didn't get to know the person. And I feel like a lot of me has failed in that department coming up through my career, that I know the person that my partner shows me at work. And that's it. I never really took time to dig deeper. Like, what are your interests? What do you do when you're not here? I guess I just maybe envisioned them all going home and playing organ music to their cats. I don't know. I don't know like why I never just thought that there was like a double life being lived in our industry. And it's all the time. Like, we put on a happy face. We're all about the adrenaline at work. We treat patients. We move on to the next one. We get through, and then we all go home and just don't know each other well outside of the job. Um, having this community has changed that. Um, my partner at work that I have now, we've been together for 4 or 5 years as partners. And we both know the moment one of us walks through the door, the other one will pick up if it's going to be a good night, a bad night. If you're feeling sick, we can read it off of each other's face immediately. Um, some of the fire departments that we work with laugh at us that we barely talk on scenes because we just have this, I don't want to call it a routine, but we kind of have this idea of where the other person's at throughout the call. And, this is what I'm doing. So this is what they're going to be doing. And it has been that way. Um, we just look at each other and give facial expressions and we know what they mean. Um, so we've been through a lot. We've been partnered since the early part of 2020. Just going through this whole thing together and doing life at work together and talking about the home life, talking about the work life. Um, hearing all the stories of her girls growing up and them doing dance, and she hears about my daughter doing cheer and my son doing football, and all the struggles and all the victories, we hear about it. And to have that kind of a work relationship is phenomenal. And I wish that more fields had that, like that you have that cohesive bond with the coworkers that you just know, so that when the day comes, they walk in the door and you see a look on their face that scares the hell out of you. You can walk over them and say, "Are you okay? Like, are you going to kill yourself?" And I think that you've said it before in one of your posts, that is the question to ask. It's not beating around the bush. Like, "Hey, how are you feeling? You feel like hurting yourself?" Like, no, are you going to kill yourself? Because you give me a yes, and that gives me a cornerstone that I can build off of. Now I've got to notify, a supervisor. I personally am going to sit there and minister to you until additional help arrives. And when I say minister, I don't mean like sit there and pray with you. I'll do that too, but it's whatever it's going to take in that moment to talk through it, to work through it, and to keep you here. And whatever those next steps look like, it might be tough, but at the end of it, she's still here, and that's important. And the whole worldview, the whole culture, the whole mindset that has shifted in me to get to this point that I'm okay asking these questions, having these conversations, and looking out for people has just been mind blowing. Um, at work, I mean, we had a guy that, man, it would be clockwork. 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, we're going to the gas station to pick him up. His asthma's bad, or if the soup kitchen was closing and he was still hungry, um, he was having an asthma attack. And sometimes he was, sometimes he wasn't, but we would just take him down the road to the local ER. He'd get his Uncrustables, his ginger ale. He'd be a happy camper. He'd hang out in the triage waiting room. Um, when he was sick, we treated him. When he wasn't, we just took the ride with him. Um, and he was homeless. He had the grace of a few people that he was able to couch surf and be on one couch one night, another couch another night. So we had a few addresses that we knew if we were getting dispatched that it was him. And I've taken short rides with this guy for all of the 5 years that I've been at my station. And you kind of get to know your patient in that way. And he was really our only like regular that we knew we were going to see on a regular basis. Sometimes he needed a nebulizer. Sometimes he just needed a sandwich and a ginger ale. But we could plan on that. And it was just part of our station. Like we had Ricky. And man, we shared so many fist bumps in the back of that ambulance talking, just going to the hospital with just different things. And we had this mutual respect. Like, I know that you don't need a paramedic right now, but every time he calls 911 in his mind, he needs to go to the hospital and he needs help. So I respect that in him. Never treated him poorly, never tried to brush him off, never said, hey, you don't have to go to the hospital, like knock this off. None of that. So we had this mutual respect and, just this good relationship that developed over the 5 minute ride to the hospital for 4.5, 5 years, however long it's been. Um, Last fall, I broke out all my winter clothes and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to wear half of this stuff. So it was one for me, one for Ricky, one for me, one for Ricky. And we ended up driving around town looking for him, found him, and he told me where he's staying at the moment and said, go knock on the door and drop it off there. We're like, okay, cool. So we did. And he walked a couple more blocks to that apartment. And I came down the steps and he's at the bottom. He's like, man, I'm not doing too good. And I was like, all right, you need to go to the hospital. He's like, yeah. I was like, all right, you could have told me that 2 blocks ago before you walked it. Um, but man, it was great. This dude's almost 60, walking around an American Eagle down through town, and just, I tried to give him a couple pairs of skinny jeans because, wearing the same compression stockings all the time, he might need a change of pace.
Yeah.
Um, but it was insane. So we had a very busy day last month, and my partner and I were up at a school, um, dealing with one situation, and another medic unit went down to ours for a cardiac arrest, and it was Ricky, and he they weren't able to keep him around, but I knew our restocking situation was going to be a challenge for that medic crew, and having somewhat of a rapport with the staff to be able to walk around and say, hey, this is what I couldn't get, this is what I need. um, I just went down to kind of help them in their restock process, but at the same time walked into the treatment room, where the hospital was ceasing the effort, and called his time of death. And I just spent some time there holding his hand. And it's like, this isn't how it was supposed to be. Like, you're not supposed to be laying here like this. First of all, to quote the nurse, we all thought he had 9 lives. Like, he wasn't going anywhere. Um, it was defeating. It was devastating. I mean, I walked out of the ER and called my wife crying. But when I took his hand, my wife was already calling me. And I was like, she's just got this knack for it. Like, she knows. And I had to walk away, call her back. And she's like, hello. And she's like, oh God, what's up? I told her, and I was like, he's gone. Um, it's just one of those hard parts of the job that, like, you get to know people and then one day they're gone. And, in his case, probably couldn't have prevented it. His financial situation, his asthma, the two worked against each other. He wasn't always able to get the meds that he needed to get. Um, I just, I'm just grateful that I have the times with him that I've had to be able to treat him when he needed to be treated, just have a good rapport with him, and just be somebody who saw him. But so often, among our coworkers, we have this ability to prevent the mental health crisis and to prevent a suicide. We have the ability to approach them and say, look, like, you don't look okay. I know you've been going through this stuff. What can I do to help? And ultimately, are you trying to kill yourself? Um, we've just got to be able to shift that culture and have that open conversation and be able to um, approach each other in that way. Because I really got tired of attending funerals for people who took their own life. Um, it's the hardest thing. It's such, there's so much guilt with it. Like, why didn't I see this coming? And it's the same response every time. Like, nobody saw it coming. Um, with Ricky, we thought he had 9 lives. The rest of us, I don't, I don't anticipate that any of us have 9 lives. Like, I joke all the time. We work in EMS, so for every year of EMS service is times 3. So, for me to be 20 years old in this job, I'm working with a 60-year-old body. So I'm not going to give up my age now and tell you that I've exceeded 100 years old in EMS years, but we're there. Um, I think when it came to the spiritual growth, though, like I needed to hit that rock bottom. I needed to have that moment myself and spend that time with myself and realize that I needed to make a change. And I think for everybody, that is it's a very sobering, it's a very upsetting, it's a hard place to start, but it's that first step that has to happen. And for everybody, I hope that when they hit rock bottom, their rock is not as deep as some other people's. That they hit something early that says, "Look, I need to make this change," and it's not because they've been suppressing stuff for so long and letting it all build up for a whole career and letting it build up for really the length of their life, suppressing everything and telling people that they're fine. But hopefully, it's something early that's like, "Man, that really hurt. Like, let me talk to somebody about this because I want that for everybody now." Like, did you break a nail? Let's sit down and let's talk about it. Like, I don't want you to, I, I don't want you to go through the pain of the broken nail alone. Like, because when the pain is bigger, I don't want you to go through that alone either. I've found that counseling was such a great start to reorienting myself on a better path. Finding my community church, come as you are. You know what? If I walk in there with torn, tattered clothing, I'm not looked down on any more than if I walked in there in a suit, because nobody there will look down on you except to lift you up. And that's been preached so many times in the 4 years I've been there, that we're not a church that's going to turn somebody away. We're a church that if a single mom comes in, there's other single moms there to receive her. There's moms that have been through it. There's moms that'll help. And it takes a village to raise a child. But if that village isn't centered around a church, I don't know what the end result looks like. But I absolutely believe that the work being done at this church is insane. And it has turned everything that I thought about church on its head. They're just authentic. We've got these small groups that are just, we can be raw together. And the biblical truths that are being taught are being illustrated in real life issues. We have a pastor who will tell us, yeah, I forgot to take my daughter lunch at daycare. I made that mistake. I packed my lunch, but I forgot to pack hers. And, my daughter, having all the grace of a pastor's daughter, looked up at me and said, I forgive you, Daddy, but don't let it happen again. You can't help but feel that. Like, yeah, I took my kids to the playground and one of them falls off the slide. Why didn't I think to pack band-aids? Like, but it's okay. Like, we're already forgiven, especially by the grace and mercy of our kids. They're just so innocent and they have their way of just telling you. I'll tell you about yourself more often than not. But between following you, between church, all the lessons I've learned in gratitude, just finding those moments in the day and saying, like, this, I am so thankful for this. You kind of have a hard time dealing with the anxiety when you're just in a different state of mind, being grateful for stuff. I sent you a quote. There was a study that was done that said that gratitude and Anxiety cannot exist in the brain simultaneously. We're not wired for it. So, in this mindset shift, trying to find everything that I'm grateful for and looking at the bright side of things, it takes a lot of stress off. It keeps me from getting inside my head and dwelling there for a long time. Um, you just kind of you want to take what you learn and you want to tell the world. So in 2022, I began leading a men's camping ministry through our church. We went in the fall, hiked some trails, sat around the campfire, and we followed a Bible study. And now, me trying to lead this for the first time, I picked an 11-part Bible study for 2 overnights. I was trying so hard to get all that material crammed in 11 pieces throughout a 2-night camping trip that I stressed myself out more than anything. But what happened around the campfire was the piece that we discussed was able to be expanded on among all the guys. And a couple of guys brought their kids with them and stuff, their sons. And we were just able to talk life and talk about how it was for us growing up versus them growing up, and just all the different pressures that are around now and everything that's making it hard to just be a good man, a good husband. Just again, it was a very raw, small group. And we've continued it each spring, each fall, trying to build on the tracks that we laid that first trip, getting a new bunch of guys out to experience it. And it's been a really rewarding endeavor for me, in that around the campfires where I also will do my best to try to preach a sermon. Doing it with no experience preaching sermons and just seeing the format used and trying to do a study, it connects. It's connected with people, and I'm grateful for that, because it's mediocre at best. And I always have one of the guys take a video of me, because I always tell them that down the road, when I actually get good at this, I want to look back and laugh at myself. But that led to me going into the seminary and working towards being a pastor. I love teaching. I teach a class on my book. I teach at the man camp, and now I'm learning how to take the teaching principles that I already have and build them up on a stronger foundation. A foundation other than Cherry Pepsi Zero. But man, the heaviest stuff that's been on my heart is just being present for hurting people. In the hospital, we deal with end of life. We have a lot of people in our career that just don't believe in faith or spirituality. We see the science in front of us, like, this is the vital sign, this is the issue, this is the medication to fix it, and if it doesn't fix it, oh well, we're going to take them to the hospital, and it's their problem. And it's a mindset that I had for a long time. But now, if I pronounce somebody in their home, my next step is going over to the family and providing whatever comfort I can, looking around for clues in the house, a cross on the wall, a picture of Jesus, anything like that, a Bible open, and I will spend time with whatever family is on scene there, praying with them before I leave and get on with the rest of my shift, because I think that piece is missed across the board. And at the funeral is a great place to pray over the person, but at the point of the suffering, at the point of the hurt, is where we need to be, and is where Jesus would have gone. He didn't wait for somebody to come into the temple. He didn't wait for somebody to come up to him. He went out and met people where they were in their position, in their hurt, and made the difference that he did. Um, I am by no means putting hands on people and healing them, but if I can give them that little bit of comfort, that little piece of comfort in that moment of just raw suffering, then I think that we're all better off for it. Um, man, between seminary and just learning to pray and praying with people, I've just developed this love for the Bible and God's word, just um, wanting to share it and wanting to build on it and dig deeper and find out so much more and just build on principles that I knew growing up from all the Sunday school stories. Um, when you actually go a couple verses beyond where that story ends, that's where it gets juicy. And, you know, the first time I read through cover to cover, I was blown away. Like, they're not talking about any of this in church. Just so much stuff that is missed. And it's incredible now to learn that, like, cover to cover is not the way to read it. Um, but knowing that from the start to the finish, it is the one big story written across all these books. Um, from creation to the fall of man to redemption and the restoration. Like, it's it's this incredible story of us, and it's wild. It's just this, so much of who I am today is now rooted in this book because I can't, get enough. Um, Going into the seminary and having it academized has been kind of a snare because, the time that I'd spent before in the Bible had been, my own terms. This is what I want to get out of this. And now to have it like, well, you need to study this passage for a grade makes it a little stressful, but I love my kids and sometimes they're stressful. So I look forward to hitting the ground running. And from the time that the book left off, I was looking at what's next and just looking to be able to have some kind of an impact with everything that I've learned and being able to be there for people. While I do see myself as a pastor periodically teaching a message, I don't see that being my forefront. The emergency services have chaplains. A lot of the times we see them at ceremonies. They'll give a benediction. If there's a banquet, they'll pray over the meal. They're there when you need them. You have that really bad call that the administration's like, okay, we need to get you guys all into a room to sit down and talk. Here comes the chaplain along. That's great. A few weeks ago, I saw our chaplain in the ER, and I was actually really excited to see him walk in and said hi to him. And he looked at me and said hi, but his face said he has no idea who I am. And that hurt. That hurt. And that was everything that I want to change about the culture and that I'd been talking about for so long, that we need chaplains that are not in our headquarters, that are not distant. We need chaplains that are near the stations, on the trucks, whatever that looks like, whatever the feasibility for that is. The service that I worked at previous to here, we had a chaplain that rode as a third person. And for the patients that were open to prayer, he prayed with them. For the patients that weren't, he just was there to provide some general counseling and comfort. And, he brought his humor into it. He's going to start an IV on you. If he hurts you, you squeeze my hand and I'll hit him later. Like, I loved that, but that came in a time that I had no appreciation for it. So I enjoyed having the chaplain around to provide some counseling and just kind of ground me here and there when I was going through my wife's pregnancy with our son that was just devastating. Um, to go through challenge after challenge throughout that pregnancy, not knowing what the next day would bring. Um, he knew to check on me regularly, and I appreciate that. Um, but I just could not wrap my head around the faith that he was actually doing any good. And now I see so much of a change that if I didn't have that experience, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now, trying to make the change that I'm trying to make. Like, I would love to see services put a chaplain on the ambulance, to just be there, that knows the people, that they're working with, that knows the medics that are going to be coming and getting on that ambulance, that are there going through the same situation and being present in that moment, so that after the call, if it is a really bad call, or even if it's just a bunch of not great calls over a period of time, to be like, hey, look, you know, Chris, you're not being Chris. What's up? Um, it's something that I miss greatly, but at the same time, it's something that I'm trying to get in motion. And um, I just see how underutilized chaplains are in our industry. My son just started a scouting troop out of another local church down here, and the pastor is the chaplain for one of our fire departments. And he said, "Man, there was a fatal fire, and the chaplain from another department came up to me and said, 'All right, get ready.'" And he's like, "I will, but I don't know what to do." So there's got to be a shift, and I'm happy to say that, like, I'm trying so hard to make that shift come, where the chaplains are present, they know their people, maybe they know their family, and it would be amazing to just have them walk in after, maybe a month they weren't able to get around, and say, hey, Chris, how's things going? How's the wife and kids? How was at least cheer season? Like, stuff like that. And I think it's very possible and very plausible for it to happen. And it's just going to take steps. And so yesterday I ended up having a meeting with our pastor to see what his vision for me moving forward is, as I'm coming up on graduation from seminary. And he sees my heart for the emergency services. He knows where my head's at in this place. And um, he's kind of helped me work through something that I'd already been thinking about, and having a Zoom based group to be able to network with the emergency services personnel, to come once a week and have that small group. And while it's not a small group that's going to appeal to the entire congregation, he seemed very happy and optimistic that they would be able to facilitate it, um, and using me as that spear in that place. Um, and I'm not going to change every heart. I'm not going to be able to be like, all right, everybody on this Zoom call. All right, now everybody, let's go to church on Sunday. It's not going to be a fast process, and the end goal might not even be getting them to go to church or find their church, or whatever. It might just be that little bit of spirituality that they need now for them, to be able to cope with whatever they're going through right now. And really, it's that recognition that, yes, we are told to save people all the time, and we don't always have the opportunity to do that. And when those bad calls happen, and when the toll is taken on us, like, who is there to save us? We're kind of left out. We can have all the posters, we can have all the business cards, we can have all the services available to us, but if we're not taking that first step, it's not progress. If we're looking out for each other and checking on each other, and if we have someone that's coming around and saying, hey, that I heard about that call last week, how are you doing? um, that is where we're going to make the difference, and that's where there's going to be this shift. And the taboo about mental health, overall needs to change. And I think that, especially in our industry where we don't like to deal with the mental health calls because we are not psychologists, we're not psychiatrists, we don't have the tools in our pretty red bag to fix what's going on right now. But once we can kind of break that taboo and make that conversation more open, um, I think we're really going to see this shift and see the change that we need to see that's going to be saving lives before they need to be saved.
100%. And you're kind of talking about saving lives almost in a twofold too, right? It's like saving the lives that were here, but also saving the life, like the spiritual life. I think that's another really great taboo topic. I love talking all taboo topics. But spirituality, the use of chaplains, yeah, that's huge. And it kind of ties back into what you said earlier too about your the church family growing up. It's not the church family that you actually have now, but when you left the church, you didn't get a call. No one checked on you when you missed. So having that ability, that's an easy way to outreach to people. Is just saying, hey, and it gives them an opportunity. Hey, heard you had a rough call. I'm here. I see you. I recognize you. I noticed that this was difficult. So giving them another opportunity, another group to connect with, and then being able to say, hey, here's this life that I have found through these things that have worked for me, and just other ways to connect with people. That's huge. I think that's the biggest thing is we're too afraid to say something wrong. We say nothing at all. And that's where the darkness grows. Is we keep things in the dark, we keep things pushed down, we keep things taboo, that we're not leaving room and opportunities for the light. So I love this idea of what you're building is it's really generating this use of services that can bring the light to people and draw the light out of people too. So I think that's really amazing, and I can't wait to hear more about this as you grow it and develop it.
It's hopefully, hopefully we're in a place at the moment where the seed is planted and getting watered because I really want it to sprout.
Yeah.
Um, but wow, like yeah, you said save being twofold, and it's funny. Like I wrote the book and I called it the double-edged sword because it was supposed to be a play on words, the S word, save.
Mm,
We're expected to save, 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 and when darkness hits, nobody's looking out for us.
mm,
But you just kind of gave me this other theme, like we're saving the person's physical um, ailment, and at the same time working on that spiritual side. And it's true. You're very, very true. That very well said.
well, thanks. And I'm glad it did kind of tie into it. I did love your note about the S word. And it's funny how for me, I wrote a series of articles for a magazine and I wasn't allowed to say the word suicide because they had it listed as a trigger word. So I was like, what? So I called it based off of the TV show The Big C for cancer, another taboo topic, right? As I
Right.
called it the Big S for suicide. So I loved that that was your connection with this. Your big S is the save because so much pressure comes on that. And you even talked and tied about this a few of your stories is how that also makes you question life itself
Mhm.
because of all the darkness that you see and that you just have to keep pushing through.
Right.
Wait on the next call. No big deal, right? That didn't just happen. Just stuff, stuff, stuff. So on to the next save, 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 save. And then it ties into what we said earlier too, right? Is if you do lose somebody or somebody ends up more seriously injured, then you're questioning, oh, I couldn't save or I didn't save. And then all that internal struggle that battles end. So I love that. I do want to make sure that you can give a good plug for your book because I did find it really fascinating, interesting, and I loved it. So since you did mention that, I want to make sure that we definitely give your book a plug. And of course, there'll be links below in the description for people to get a copy.
Awesome. Yeah. So the double-edged sword was published in April of 2021. It's available on Amazon through my website, www.christopherturnbull.com. It's also available as an audiobook on Audible. And, for everyone that has been listening to this interview today, you've heard my voice enough. So I promise it's not me reading that book. Um, but it's in different format, so that you can listen to it in your car, listen to it on your treadmill, whatever you got going on. But yeah, I'll tell you what, putting that physical book in people's hands has felt really good. And some of the feedback, some of the stories have just been mind blowing. And you realize that while you're holding it all in and keeping it all to yourself, there's so many other people who are also doing the same thing, feeling the exact same way, that nobody wants to hear it. And it's not true. Like, and maybe we don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear that you are suffering, but if you are, I want to hear about it because I want to know how to be their best for you. Um, Nobody has a perfect life and wakes up one day ready to kill themselves. It's a gradual progression. There's so many factors that go into it. There are warning signs that get missed, um, but it's just one step at a time in the wrong direction, and it's devastating when it happens. Um, you got to have that support network, and that's really throughout the book. Like, what is that support network now for you? Like, here's my story. This is the stuff that I've gone through, and this is the stuff that worked, this is the stuff that didn't work. But don't worry, it is not all war stories. It's experiences that needed to be said to be able to transition into the lesson that needed to be learned. um, and I think really for any provider, um, it's an outstanding resource, and across any career, really, the stressors and stuff that build up, the home life portion, is real for everybody. And there's a lot to unpack in reading it, but I feel like I don't leave much hanging. Um, I certainly like to end the book on the good note. Um, just that there is so much more ahead. There's so much change to be made. There's so much culture shift that still needs to happen, and each of us can be that conduit to make that happen. We only see our bosses when we're in trouble. We, um, that's one occupational hazard, right? And it's across industries. Like, if you're getting called into the boss's office, you're either getting promoted or you're in trouble. And if you're getting called there a bunch of times, you're not getting promoted that much. So maybe the leadership by walking around method, that IBM pioneered, the leaders of the organizations are out among their people, interacting and having informal conversations with absolutely no motive. Like, I don't want to get anything out of this conversation specifically, but what are some of the things that are on your mind? Like, let's just, is there a better way to do what you're doing? Do you feel like we've given you all the resources we can to, um, do your job? And when you kind of have that loose, open conversation, and that kind of an approach, it's not intimidating. You get to see the management then more often than, oh, I'm in trouble. And you don't put up that wall. Um, for me personally, I struggled more with self-worth than I did with authority. But anybody in an authority position over me, I recognized in myself that I don't even have the value to be here. So I put up this wall between myself and any sort of management, that, like, I'm not going to open up. I can't open up because I don't want to show you that I'm hurting through something. I don't want to show you there's a better way to do something because I don't want to step on your toes. I don't have the worth to do that. And to have that wall is a terrible thing. But there's so many industries that the material within this book can reach and resonate with. And while it was definitely geared toward the emergency services, I endorse my book for anybody, really. Yeah, I know, right? I endorse my own book. Of course you
I,
do.
I second that though. I totally do because there's so many different themes that you bring up in there that I think anybody listening to this will have a great, beautiful takeaway from your book. So I guess there's your second endorsement.
I said it earlier. If Mrs. Oklahoma Petite 2025 says it's a good book, it's a good book. But I'm not ending this interview, by the way, without getting a proper Miss Oklahoma wave.
Oh, okay, okay.
I'll demonstrate. There it is. Oh my gosh, look at that. See,
I've practiced a lot.
I would hope, and apparently you're killing it. So there's that. But
Thank you.
you've just been this model uh, throughout the last several years since we first spoke of just strength. And I mean, yes, I will give you a hard time when you post a picture of you sitting on the steps holding a cup of Starbucks. I'm going to send you that picture of me sitting on steps holding Dunkin'. Um, but man, like the material you put out, the daily laugh, the daily smiles, you're reaching so many people on such a high level. And there's times at work that I'm scrolling, just had a bad call, and there's a cat doing something absolutely stupid, and any other time of my day I'm going to make fun of you because it's cats. But man, I'm just gonna sit there and howl because like there it is. And it's that quick pep talk that you need when you need it. And it's remarkable. And your work with veterans, your work with the rowing team, and then caring for your husband. I admire you tremendously. You are just a shining star for so many of us. And you might not get to hear it all the time, but I want to make sure that you know it now, that you are absolutely a beacon of light that just shines, and you're remarkable.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. It's very kind. And that kind of like almost like reaffirms why I do what I do is that if it's one person and it's the darkness can consume us, the days we go through so much, no matter what our job is, no matter what our situation is. I joke all the time, 2020, even if you take COVID off the table, was terrible with everything else and just life flaring up at once. And I'm just I'm grateful for going down the path of really finding gratitude and focusing and seeking the light for myself because it really helped train my brain and prepare me for this life that God has gifted me. And my husband had this very when I first met him, he always said, "You're only guaranteed two things in life: to be born and to die." And for me, I really had to learn that myself when his brain cancer came back. And it really is. It's everything in between. You can play an active role or a passive role in it. It's up to you. And just really having to embrace that and say, I the gift I've been given is knowing that every day with my husband is his last day because we've been on that edge so many times. So I hope to continue to share the light and inspire people and let people know like, hey, there's someone here, there's people who are here to help you and talk about all things taboo, because the more we make things taboo, the more we put it in the dark, the more it just festers. And like you said, that one step at a time, right, is eventually we just get completely consumed by the darkness. We can't see the light. And oftentimes the only way out of that darkness and the only way to end the pain, that's when people think about suicide. So hopefully this grows and we're able to reach more people. And I think your story is amazing too. And everyone knows me. I don't read books. As a researcher, I will read articles, but for books, I have to have them Audible. So I remember we met, we stayed in contact, and you're like, I was like, I needed an Audible. So you messaged me, hey, it's on Audible now. And I'm like, yes, this is amazing. I'm so excited. So I'm excited to share that with people too, because I've officially listened to it all. So yeah, I'm giving that endorsement because I have actually listened to your whole book.
And it wasn't my voice, which makes it so much better.
It was a good voice. I'm not saying your voice is a bad voice, but I have listened. I started a few Audible books, like, and I couldn't finish them just because I was like, oof, not my tone, not my, I don't know, not my vibe, as they say now, right?
Right, right. There are some that, my goodness.
Well, I'm excited to have this episode and be able to share it with people. I know we'll have a bunch of links down below where people can connect you and get your book. And you've talked about a few things that you have up and coming. I just want to give you a chance if there's anything that we've left that you want to make sure to talk about or share, or give us maybe I always say like the 10% rule is that people only retain 10% of what you say. So maybe like this is like your 10%.
Perfect. All right. So, we as an industry in emergency services, we have this ability to bury our suffering until it just wakes us up one day and puts us in a very bad place. And my recognition in it in our industry has led to writing the book and hopefully sharing it across other industries, in that we have all of these stressors outside of your work life. The people you work with at work are probably living a double life. Who they are at work is not who they are at home. And so when they get to work and they try to hang up the home life, but it's just eating away at them, we just really need to be good humans and check up on each other and, offer whatever we can. If it means we just sit down and talk for a little while, or you sit quietly while they cry, or you take the time to pray with them, whatever that looks like for you. I mean, we've got such a toolbox in front of us to be able to reach people and really just lift each other up.
Yeah, I love that so much. I can't wait to see all the growth from the programs that you're helping get started and the changes you make. And hopefully people are listening to this and they go back to their own environments and make changes as well, especially like we said in those first responder roles, speaking up about it, talk about it. It's okay to not be okay. It's just not okay to stay that way.
Right.
And knowing, I know you'd also mentioned going to counseling and having different support systems. Find what's right for you, right? The one church you watched, okay, the second one you really felt connected to. So resources are flavors of ice cream. You just got to find your flavor. And I want to thank you so much for all of your time and your spirit and your energy, your willingness to speak up, because I think there's so many people who have amazing, great stories that they've been through in life. Not enough people share them. So I'm so grateful that we met through LinkedIn a few years ago and that we stayed in contact and that you came on to tell more of your story and that you're willing to just help more people.
So in closing, I'm just going to encourage you. I keep a plastic fork on my visor on the sunglasses hook. Yeah, it's been said at many tables to hold on to your fork because dessert's coming. So for anyone listening, for you as well, like just hold on to your fork. The best is yet to come.
I love that. And I definitely love dessert.
Yeah.
Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. If you found this episode inspiring, please share it with someone you never know who needs more light in their life. May this serve as a reminder that there's always darkness in the world. Do not let it consume you. Always seek the light. Please take a moment to do the good old subscribe, rate, and review. Your support means so much to me, and it helps me spread more light and love. Until next time, be kind, be loving, be human, and don't ever let anyone steal your hope.